If anxiety has been running your life, if your chest tightens every time you think about the future, if you've been pretending to be fine while your mind feels like a battlefield, this message is for you. Anxiety isn't a weakness. It's not proof that you're broken. It's a signal that something inside you is trying to rise. Today, I'm going to show you how to take that uncontrollable energy and turn it into strength, clarity, and undeniable power. Let's begin. Number one, anxiety is not your enemy. It's a signal. Anxiety is often labeled as the villain of your life, something you must eliminate, silence, or fight against. But the truth is far more nuanced. Anxiety is not your enemy. It's a signal, a messenger, a form of internal communication that your mind and body use to get your attention. When you feel anxiety rising, it's not because you're weak or incapable. It's because something inside you is trying to warn you, guide you, or protect you. Most people never learn to interpret these signals. They panic when anxiety appears, creating a cycle of fear about fear itself. But once you understand that anxiety carries information, not destruction, you begin to shift from feeling attacked by your emotions to learning from them. Anxiety shows up in the moments when you've been ignoring something important, stress you haven't processed, boundaries you've allowed people to cross, situations you've outgrown but still tolerate. It speaks through rapid heartbeat, tight muscles, racing thoughts, or a heavy chest. But underneath those sensations lies a deeper message. Maybe you're living out of alignment with your values. Maybe you're pushing yourself too hard without rest. Maybe you're staying silent in places where you should be expressing your truth. Anxiety doesn't appear randomly. It appears when your inner world and your outer actions stop matching. It's a signal urging you to slow down, reevaluate, or make a change you've been avoiding. Instead of treating anxiety as something you must suppress or run from, imagine treating it as feedback. Your nervous system isn't malfunctioning. It's responding to something meaningful. When you start to ask questions like, what is my anxiety trying to tell me? Or where am I feeling unsafe or overwhelmed? You shift from fear to awareness. Awareness is the foundation of control. You may discover that your anxiety increases around certain people because your body senses a lack of emotional safety. You may notice it rises at night because your mind finally has a moment to process what you spent the day avoiding. You may find it appears before big opportunities because part of you fears failure or judgment. These patterns matter. They're clues pointing toward unresolved experiences, unmet needs, or internal conflicts that require acknowledgement, not avoidance. When you stop viewing anxiety as an enemy and start seeing it as communication from your deeper self, everything changes. You don't have to let the feeling consume you, but you also don't have to silence it or pretend it doesn't exist. You learn to pause, listen, and interpret what your body is trying to say, because your anxiety is a signal guiding you toward growth, honesty, and alignment. Number two, control begins with awareness, not suppression. Control doesn't come from pushing your emotions down, ignoring them, or pretending they don't exist. It begins with awareness, the simple act of noticing what you feel, when you feel it, and why it's happening. Most people have been conditioned to believe that strength means suppressing discomfort. They bottle up their stress, numb their anxiety, and silence their thoughts until everything erupts at once. But suppression isn't control. It's avoidance disguised as resilience. When you suppress your emotions, you disconnect from the signals your mind and body are trying to send you. You miss the subtle cues that something is wrong, something is overwhelming you, or something in your environment is draining your energy. Awareness, on the other hand, invites you to slow down long enough to understand what's going on inside you. It doesn't demand that you fix everything instantly. It simply asks you to observe without judgment. Awareness allows you to identify the patterns that fuel your anxiety. It helps you recognize the moments when your chest tightens before you walk into certain rooms, or when your mind spirals only after specific conversations. It reveals how your body responds to stress long before your thoughts catch up. Instead of being blindsided by emotional outbursts or sudden panic, awareness lets you catch the early signs: the quickening heartbeat, the mental fog, the irritability, the urge to withdraw. These small signals often appear hours or even days before anxiety peaks, but you only notice them when you're paying attention. Suppression forces these signals underground, where they grow louder and stronger until they demand your attention through overwhelming emotion. Awareness prevents this buildup because it encourages early intervention, honest reflection, and mindful responses rather than reactive ones. When you practice awareness, you start recognizing the difference between real threats and imagined ones. You learn to distinguish between instinctive fear, the kind that keeps you safe, and conditioned fear, the kind that holds you back. This distinction is crucial because anxiety often exaggerates danger, but you can't correct these distortions if you're busy pushing the feelings away. Awareness gives you the space to pause, question your interpretations, and choose how you want to respond. It creates a gap between stimulus and reaction, and in that gap is where your power exists. You're no longer driven purely by emotion. You become someone who can acknowledge discomfort without being controlled by it. Awareness is freeing because it transforms your relationship with anxiety from one of fear and resistance to one of understanding and choice. Number 3, your nervous system learns from your patterns. Your nervous system is constantly learning from the way you respond to life. It studies everything you do, how you react to stress, how you handle confrontation, how you cope with fear, and how you deal with uncertainty. Every action becomes a lesson your mind and body store for later. When you repeatedly respond to anxiety with avoidance, withdrawal, or suppression, your nervous system learns that these situations are dangerous and must be escaped. Over time, even harmless triggers begin to feel threatening because your body has been trained to react with fear. This is why the same patterns keep repeating: the same panic before social events, the same fear of judgment, the same overwhelming pressure when you face change. It's not because something is wrong with you, it's because your nervous system has been conditioned to interpret these experiences as unsafe. Patterns become habits, and habits become ingrained responses that feel automatic, even when they no longer serve you. When you understand this, you begin to see anxiety not as an unpredictable storm, but as a predictable outcome of learned patterns. Your brain and body are doing exactly what they were trained to do. And just as unhealthy patterns reinforce fear, healthy patterns reinforce resilience. Every time you choose to face something uncomfortable, even in the smallest way, your nervous system learns a different lesson. It learns that discomfort doesn't destroy you. It learns that uncertainty doesn't mean danger. It learns that you can handle more than you previously believed. These micro moments of courage create new pathways in your brain, slowly replacing panic with capability and avoidance with confidence. This is not something that happens all at once. It is a gradual rewiring shaped by repetition. But every small decision counts because your nervous system is always watching, always adapting, always learning from your behavior. When you break old patterns, you're not just changing your thoughts, you're retraining your entire physiological response to life. You're teaching your body to stay grounded instead of shutting down. You're teaching your mind to assess reality instead of catastrophizing. You're teaching your breath, your muscles, and your heartbeat to remain steady even when the world feels uncertain. And this is where genuine transformation begins. Instead of being trapped in reactive patterns that were built from fear, you start building new patterns rooted in strength, awareness, and self-trust. Your nervous system becomes an ally rather than an obstacle, responding to challenges with stability instead of panic, because it has learned through your actions that you are capable, resilient, and safe. Number 4, confidence is a skill built through micro wins. Confidence isn't something you're born with, and it's not something that suddenly appears when life becomes easier. Confidence is a skill, a muscle that strengthens every time you choose action over hesitation, even in the smallest way. Most people wait for a big breakthrough, a surge of motivation, or a dramatic life change to finally feel confident. But real confidence is built long before the big moments ever arrive. It's shaped in the tiny decisions you make every single day: getting out of bed when you don't want to, showing up even when you feel insecure, speaking your truth even when your voice shakes. These micro wins may seem insignificant at first, but they accumulate. And each time you do something you once thought you couldn't, you teach your mind, your body, and your nervous system a new truth: that you are capable. Micro wins matter because they bypass the overwhelming pressure that often comes with big goals. When you focus solely on massive achievements, your mind becomes paralyzed by the distance between where you are and where you want to be. Anxiety thrives in that gap, but micro wins shrink the gap. They shift your focus from what feels impossible to what is achievable today, right now. Making your bed, going for a 10-minute walk, responding to one email, saying no to something that drains you. These tiny actions rewire your brain. They remind you that progress is possible. They show you that momentum is something you can control. And with each micro win, your internal narrative begins to shift. You stop telling yourself, I can't, and start recognizing, I just did. What most people don't realize is that confidence is a memory based skill. Your brain builds confidence by recalling evidence from your past behavior. If most of your memories involve hesitation, avoidance, or fear, your brain will naturally assume that you are incapable of more. But when you consistently stack micro wins, you provide your brain with new evidence. It begins to associate you with action, with discipline, with courage. Even if the win feels small, the psychological impact is enormous. Your self-image slowly transforms from someone who doubts themselves to someone who follows through. Over time, these micro wins create a foundation strong enough to support bigger risks and bolder decisions. You no longer seek confidence before taking action. You understand that confidence emerges because you took action. That is the power of micro wins. They teach you that you don't have to overcome everything at once. You just have to take the next small step, and the next, and the next, until confidence becomes a natural extension of who you are. Number 5, your environment shapes your anxiety. Your environment plays a far greater role in your anxiety than most people realize. Anxiety is not created in isolation. It's influenced by the spaces you live in, the people you interact with, the conversations you surround yourself with, and even the energy of the room you spend the most time in. Your nervous system is constantly scanning for cues of safety or danger, and your environment feeds those cues every moment of the day. If you live in clutter, loudness, or chaos, your body remains on edge because it feels there's always something unresolved. If you're surrounded by people who criticize you, dismiss you, or pressure you, your nervous system interprets this as emotional threat. Even digital environments matter. The type of content you consume, the messages you absorb, and the comparisons you make silently shape your internal reality. Anxiety becomes louder in environments that drain you, invalidate you, or overwhelm your senses. The truth is, your mind adapts to whatever environment you repeatedly expose it to. If your surroundings encourage calmness, routine, and clarity, your body reflects that stability. But if your environment is unpredictable, filled with emotional tension, or lacking boundaries, your nervous system reacts accordingly. Many people feel constant anxiety without recognizing that it's not just internal. It's a response to the external world not supporting their well-being. Maybe you're trying to heal in a place that constantly triggers you. Maybe you're trying to grow around people who benefit from keeping you small. Maybe you're trying to build confidence while living in an environment that reminds you of your failures. These contradictions create emotional friction that amplifies anxiety and keeps your system in a loop of stress. Your external world and internal feelings are deeply connected, shaping each other in ways you often don't consciously notice. When you begin paying attention to your environment, you start to understand your anxiety on a deeper level. You notice how you breathe differently in certain rooms, how your body tenses around certain people, how your energy drops after certain conversations. You start seeing patterns, the places where you feel safe and the places where you feel threatened, the people who calm your mind and the ones who destabilize it. And these observations matter because they reveal what needs to change. Sometimes your anxiety isn't coming from within you, but from around you. Sometimes the most powerful step you can take toward healing is adjusting your surroundings, choosing healthier relationships, creating boundaries, removing yourself from toxicity, or redesigning your space so your mind can finally feel supported, grounded, and at ease. Number 6, power comes from choosing reality over catastrophe. Anxiety has a way of pulling you out of the present moment and dragging you into catastrophic what-if scenarios. Your mind begins imagining worst-case outcomes, exaggerating threats, and creating fear around situations that haven't even happened. This is the nature of anxiety. It operates in possibilities, not realities. It paints a distorted picture of danger, convincing you that something terrible is always about to happen. But power doesn't come from entertaining these catastrophes. Power comes from choosing to anchor yourself in what is actually happening, not in what your fear is projecting. Reality is often far less dramatic, far less dangerous, and far more manageable than the stories your anxious mind creates. When you choose reality over fear-driven imagination, You reclaim control over your thoughts, your choices, and your emotional responses. This shift isn't about ignoring your feelings, it's about grounding them in truth instead of allowing them to spiral into distortion. The mind loves patterns, and if it becomes accustomed to catastrophic thinking, it will continue to feed you the same narrative every time you face uncertainty. You'll start expecting failure even when you're prepared, assuming rejection even when people support you, and fearing loss even when nothing is wrong. Catastrophe becomes a habit, a reflex, and your nervous system learns to react as if every situation is a crisis. But when you consciously interrupt that pattern and bring yourself back to reality, you disrupt the cycle of panic. You begin to question your own assumptions. Is this a real threat or just a feeling? Is this happening now, or am I imagining a future disaster? Is there evidence for my fear, or is my mind repeating an old pattern? These questions ground you, slowly teaching your brain the difference between actual danger and emotional discomfort. The more often you make this distinction, the less power catastrophic thoughts have over you. Choosing reality means choosing clarity. It means observing the situation in front of you, your surroundings, your emotions, your options, without letting fear build stories that don't exist. It requires patience and self-awareness because catastrophic thinking often feels automatic. But every moment you bring yourself back to the present, you strengthen a new internal pathway, one rooted in truth rather than distortion. Over time, your nervous system begins responding differently. Instead of spiraling, it stabilizes. Instead of panicking over imagined scenarios, it adapts to what is actually happening. You become someone who responds, not someone who reacts. And this shift reshapes your entire emotional experience because when you stop living inside catastrophes and start living inside reality, your sense of power naturally rises. Your anxiety doesn't define your limits. It reveals where your strength is waiting to grow. Every moment you choose awareness over fear, you reclaim more of yourself. And as you rise above old patterns and step into truth, you unlock a power that was always yours to begin with.